Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow, and we are back here in the Hendrickson Library at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters in Central Iowa. You've got John Hendrickson and myself here ready to thrill and excite you on the gold standard in Iowa conservative entertainment. I did it this time. John, are you excited, ready to go?
I am, yes.
He's really gotten into this whole being emotive and exciting thing. I can hardly contain him anymore.
You know what I'm really excited about?
What's that?
And you didn't notice my new decoration for the studio.
Okay, so I don't know if we can do this because post-production is sometimes a challenge for me. But we'll get that zoomed in. That is fantastic. That is going to be a feature piece. So for those of you that are on audio only, and if you are on audio only, you're really missing out, because not only do you get to see John and I's smiling faces, we have take it away, John.
We have a brand new giant bust of Abraham Lincoln.
That is great.
Yeah, in the library here.
And John is a huge Lincoln fan. Are you?
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
you are?
I am, yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were one of the Lincoln critics or...
No, I like Lincoln.
I actually do, too.
Yeah.
Well, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
And is that a new piece to the collection or new to us?
It's a new piece to the collection, yeah.
Okay.
So it's going to be up here in the library.
So, again, for those of you that are audio only, when we talk about the Hendrickson Library, that's not just shtick. It's real.
Yes, yeah.
And we only have part of the collection. And it's a lot like your favorite museum where, you know, what's on display isn't really the full collection.
Yeah,
it's just they bring things out. That's kind of the way things are here at the Hendrickson Library. So right now we've got at least a portion of the books. We've got a bust of Lincoln and a Hoover ball.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, we used to have the mascot, which was the American gnome, but we lost him.
Hopefully you win him back.
I'm not.
Whenever the trivia game is again.
I have made my peace with that.
Yeah.
Okay, really quick. Construction update. There's really no update on what's going on here in the studio, although if you're a really dedicated listener to the program, you know my thoughts on public art. And at the pond here near ITR World Headquarters in Central Iowa, they have installed some really wild-looking sculptures on the pond on the trail. As far as we can tell, those are taxpayer-funded pieces of art on the bike trail. So, John, your thoughts on the art? I'm
sure it's maybe trying to make it more welcoming or something. I don't know.
We all know you're an aficionado of modern art, so these pieces are colorful and janky looking, and I don't know, whatever. But for those of you, it's a good use of taxpayer money, I'm sure. Okay, we're going to flip the script here a little bit today. We have had the trivia contest.
Yes.
This is the official music for not only the McLaughlin Group, but for the Hendrickson Trivia Contest, which if we can't switch it up pretty soon, it's going to be named the Bill Gustav Trivia Contest, because he usually is the one that gets things right. So for today's episode, I'm going to let you take it away and present this to the folks.
And last week, once again, Representative Gustav got the answer, and it was James Madison and Federalist 45.
Yeah.
And so, but here's the quote today, and we'll see if people can get this. Has to do with federalism. To tempt the states by federal subsidies to sacrifice their vested rights is not a wholesome practice, no matter how worthy the object to be attained. We should not only decidedly refuse to countenance additional federal participation in state aid projects, but should make careful study of all of our activities of that character with a view to curtailing them.
Ooh, that's on point, because we really do want to do careful study of these programs to curtail their impact on the state.
Yes, yeah.
I'm guessing that's nothing new. Knowing John, that probably was not something that... I'm guessing the answer is not John Hendrickson circa 2025.
No.
This has got a little bit more age to it than that. So that's fantastic. Yeah. So anyway, there are really no gifts involved with being a trivia contest winner, other than you get favorable mention here on the podcast and John's admiration. Okay, we do have a lot to cover today. I want to touch on this business of foreign intervention, U.S. intervention in Iran. This is one where John and I might not land on the exact same spot on this. So we've had some conversation leading up to this, and as I'm sure anyone, if you pay enough attention to the news to actually get as far as listening to this podcast, you probably know what's going on in the world is that after much debate and frankly good, honest philosophical debate on the right of the appropriateness of the United States dropping its pretty advanced, pretty powerful ordinance on Iranian nuclear facilities. Did I say that right, John?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So tell me what you think.
Well, I was really worried about this, and as you said, there was a pretty extensive debate within Republican circles and conservative circles about whether or not the president should get involved, and of course that he did. He dropped the bombs on the 3 sites, and so that part's settled. And I do think that I am thankful that I think it's still holding. I haven't seen anything differently right as we're on, but there's a ceasefire, and so I hope that holds and that there can be a negotiated peace. And my concern going up into this was just not getting into another war in the Middle East, and also because I strongly agreed with what the president said, and even when in a speech he gave, just several weeks ago about not wanting to get involved in nation building again. And so those were my concerns about this, kind of going into this. And so, and also a lot of the loudest voices that were sort of beating the war drums about this were a lot of the neoconservatives that, were instrumental in kind of getting us involved in Iraq as well, which was a mistake.
Yeah, I think, and as we didn't talk about it on the show, John, I was in favor of an action sort of like this. I didn't want active boots on the ground, and I was a little leery of the calls for regime change, because that's where we start to get ourselves in trouble. But for me, the yardstick is the direct national security of the United States. And to me, a nuclear Iran is a direct threat to the national security of the United States. Going further than that may not be in our interest. I don't know. That's debatable, but to me, it's a line in the sand. They can't have these nuclear weapons.
I would agree, and then I would just say 2 other points that are concerning. One is just the concern of the open border we've had, and so with potential retaliation, and that's a huge concern. And then also, the other thing is I worry about is what are China and Russia going to do? And so I think once we get into this situation, these things can easily get out of hand, and that's one concern I have. And there was a lot of voices that were just almost saying that this is going to be a cakewalk, and that was where I think we start making mistakes.
I think thinking about this, what is President Trump's foreign policy? And you're a presidential scholar, but each president sort of has a certain type or flavor of foreign policy attached to them. And we talked a lot about this in pre-production this morning, John. But Donald Trump clearly is America first, is certainly less interventionist than most of his predecessors. But as we've seen here, and I think in some others, he is not opposed to some amount of military action.
Yes.
And clearly, even by his own words, believes in peace through strength.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got to show the strength, I guess, every once in a while. And maybe we're still figuring out what this. Frankly, and if I'm wrong, tell me. A part of it is to be a little bit unpredictable. And that goes back to the art of the deal. And
Yeah.
and I guess what I think with regard to China and Russia and everything is maybe they stop and think about it before they go a little bit further, because they don't know, how far. Nobody ever thought that Joe Biden was gonna tee up something like this, or Obama. The only thing they thought that Obama was going to deliver to the Iranians was pallets of cash. So there was no threat there. Nothing. They had to discount that risk. I don't know. It could get bad. Like I don't want to be involved in anything else in the Middle East. We just got to see whether it works. Right now, it looks like it worked, but like you said, there's a whole lot of threats that are still out there, and the Iranians aren't going to go away.
No.
The other half of this is not just the bombs that President Trump delivered on the Fordo nuclear facility, but the bombs that he was delivering on the White House lawn this morning.
Yes.
Did you see this?
Yes, I did, yeah.
So
yeah.
Donald Trump, in what looked to be a fairly authentic anger, dropped F-bombs on the state of Israel and the Iranians, mostly on Israel for continuing to violate the terms of the ceasefire.
Yeah.
And it looks like they've stood down. Now, this might all be part of the show. Clearly the Iranians were allowed to put on a show with their launching some missiles that didn't go anywhere on Qatar. And I don't know. I mean, we don't get too deep into this. A lot of times it's all scripted, but I think anytime you got a U.S. president that's dropping F-bombs on the state of Israel on the White House lawn, that's not typically what I expect out of presidents. But the ceasefire is holding.
Yes, yeah.
So, anyway, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I love foreign policy. You love presidential politics.
Yeah.
I like that too. It's an interesting intersection of it, and it certainly has drawn most of the political attention for the time being on that conflict. Oh,
Yeah, and we have. I mean, just real quick, we haven't seen these. Just the last few weeks have been some pretty intense debates within amongst conservatives over foreign policy questions.
I'm glad you brought that up,
Yeah.
John, because we, at least conservatives, have had a pretty robust debate about how this should go, and I don't think it's just the Paul Wolfowitz, Dick Cheney neocons versus the Tucker Carlson disengagement. I mean, there's a whole lot of shades in between, but it's been a pretty honest conversation.
Yes, yeah.
And a lot of folks saying, hey, I didn't support this, but it looks like it kind of worked.
Mm-hmm.
There's debate that really isn't happening at all on the left wing right now here in the state of Iowa. And you brought this up this morning, and we touched on this before, but the conversation about protecting women's sports. And if for those of you that have listened or watched the news, likely Democrat nominee for governor on the Republican side, Rob Sand, very emphatically and very clearly said on the Simon Conway show here on WHO that he doesn't believe that men should participate in women's sports. Pretty clear, and that's, I think, a majority position, which is probably why he took it among all Iowans. Well, those are fighting words on the Democrat, on the liberal side. And so it's been interesting to see the state party chair Ross Wilburn or other Democrat elected sort of tying themselves in knots, trying to figure out where they actually stand on this issue. Did I state that accurately?
I think you summed that up, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to rehash that whole story, but where is the honest debate over that? It seems like a whole lot of people trying to either sweep this under the rug or apologize for Rob Sand.
Yeah, and I think there's a strategy, too, by some Iowa Democrats that are wanting to put this to the side and basically say, let's focus on, and I don't know if this is a good comparison, but it almost reminds me of they're using the Bill Clinton playbook from the 90s of trying to look like the centrist. And, we're going to look at the bread and butter kitchen table issues and try to win back rural Iowa and try to rebuild votes and not focus so much on this extreme leftist social agenda. And so I wonder if that's what's at play, too.
Yeah, there's some, I think that's all right. And from a tactical standpoint, if just purely about winning elections, they should. Mm-hmm. They should pivot to the middle. They should focus on the issues that are important to Iowans, which are kitchen table, pocketbook issues, which they have not really in the last several cycles been focused on. It's laughable that they want to say, well, it's Republicans, it's conservatives that keep focusing on these issues. Well, no, really, you're the ones that are trying to remake the very nature of
that's right
women's competitions and biology in general, and the rest of us are sitting there thinking, hey, wait a minute. But so that just doesn't work either. Yeah, and you see the way this is framed up. The Des Moines Register's headline said, Iowa Democrats navigate transgender issues. What a glowing way to talk about their, they come to grips with the inauthenticity of where they're at on this issue, or come face to face with the fact that they're, on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue and can't quite seem to figure their way out because their base has become so radicalized. Where's that comment in this whole? Yeah. I did appreciate, Iowa Field Report, our friends there, and that characterize this as the pretzel, the knot that they can't seem to quite get themselves out of. But it is certainly their standard bearer. Rob Sand is at odds with their base on this one.
Yes.
Now, that's the downside of him not really having a primary is, well, another coronation of a Democrat official, whether it be Kamala Harris or Rob Sand or anybody else, is that they don't really get the scrutiny on this. But there we are. I found that interesting. Anything else on that one, John?
Well, no. I just, the only thing is I wonder if he where his position truly is, if he's just being silent and just wanting to look like a moderate.
I think Rob Sand's position on this and any number of issues is wherever he thinks you want it to be.
Yeah,
is pretty much where it is.
Yeah,
I'm not sure where the conviction is on anything.
Yeah.
But that's fine. We will have much more to say about all of that. Okay. One last thing. I don't know if it's a last thing, but we talk regularly here about tax credits, tax policy, what the ideal thing is. And I'll let you expand on this a little bit, John, but we believe in a tax code that is flatter and fairer for everyone. We've made tremendous progress on a flat tax, but we still have a whole host of giveaways, credits, carve-outs that exist for any number of people. So I bring this up just because I saw the other day that the Iowa Economic Development Association had a new round of awards that they give out for economic development, or that's what their intended thing is. But there were three of them that were issued. Did you see this? I mean, we talked about it briefly.
Yeah,
okay, so I didn't want to just drop this on you. 3 projects, and they do this periodically. This isn't some new thing, but 3 projects which they estimate will create or retain 300 jobs and $160-some million in economic activity. Not sure about that or how they get those numbers, but that's fine. The first one is JBS in Perry for a pork producing plant. And now you remember they lost the...
Was it Tyson?
The Tyson plant.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is to come back in, and they're going to make sausage, like sausage. But anyway, they say that could create 500 jobs. It also comes along with $10 million in TIF money. Their second one, ITA Group in West Des Moines, adding on to their existing office building, 33 jobs. And Merchants Bonding Company here in Central Iowa, an $800,000 award and $800,000 in TIF for 34 jobs. Those are carve-outs. Those may all be good projects that will grow the local economy in those areas. I don't know because I don't know enough about those projects or what they're going to do. But I do know that those benefit those individual actors and do not benefit every other business that's paying tax. Is that a fair statement?
That is. That's a very fair statement.
And I bring up the way that, again, these incentives are often structured, state and local, so there's TIF dollars in there as well. And we've talked about TIF, but now you start putting a package together, all these dollars. And what I would like, and I think the one that caught my eye was the JBS one in Perry, are these incentives what's causing this development to happen or this project to happen? It's that classic but-for test. But for this money, would we still see this, or is this just a sweetener for the bottom line for the folks that were going to build it anyway? Is that correct? Is that the way we're supposed to think about this?
I think so, and I I have to confess I have not looked specifically at this, except for reading in the news. So, but a lot of times the I think the sweetener is a pull for them, those businesses. Yeah. But so it's a case by case situation. But a lot of times, there are businesses, especially those that expand, that will expand regardless of those subsidies or those incentives that are given to them. And but other times, what happens is for outside businesses, and this is where you almost have Iowa is, and all these states are using these incentives to compete against one another, and this is where where a more competitive tax code comes into play as well. It makes Iowa more competitive. So in a sense, we don't have to try to lure businesses with these incentives. But it's, I think one point is that with this, and I thought of an article that I co-wrote with a friend of our program, John Mazzina, who would do a much better job than me answering this question because he specializes in this issue of economic development. Yeah. And John Mazzina and I wrote an article about economic development versus economic growth in relation to property tax. And, we were talking about the public art by the pond, this beautiful art by the pond.
I'm sure somebody likes it. I take no position. Yeah. I don't particularly care for it, but somebody might.
Maybe it's trying to scare things away from the pond or something. Remember those foxes by our old office? Maybe that's what the art is there to scare those things away. Nice. But anyways, when you have a property tax problem like we have in Iowa, these development deals, in a sense, make it harder for local governments to do property tax relief. And so I think one side we see that we forget on the property tax debate is a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, are property tax payers. And
or humble nonprofits.
Yes, okay. Yes, yeah, that's true. And so if you want to see economic growth, it would be very well for communities to start lowering the tax burden on these small businesses instead of just favoring a few businesses with certain handouts, because sometimes the promised jobs don't even result in these incentives.
I think a lot of things here, John. You're exactly right on all that. And two of these three, they're existing profitable Iowa companies that are growing. They knew they were in a growth phase, needed to add on to their facilities, and went to government for the funds to do that. There's a lot of other businesses in the state of Iowa that I think would like to grow or could. So why are we funding that growth that's already happening? They didn't think, hey, let's build onto our offices and then see if we can grow our business to fill all the new space. That's not how it works. And then this third one here, and I'm going to push you a little bit on this one, John. So this is a pork producing plant in Perry. Like, you know why the pork producers come to Iowa to process the pork, right? Because that's where we have all of the animals at.
Yes, yeah.
They're not doing pork processing in New York State. This is where it is. We've got more hogs than people in the state of Iowa. So it kind of makes sense that if you wanted to come process sausage, you'd probably do it here in the state of Iowa. Mm-hmm. And it would make sense to do it someplace where there was already a plant.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we need to incentivize that?
I would say no. And certainly what your local governments and your economic development people will say, well, we have to do this because if we don't do it, they're just going to go somewhere else. And so, and then, if business A isn't, I don't know if that was thunder or
I don't know what that is.
Yeah. But if business A was going to expand, then we really need to do this because that's gonna maybe attract more people into our city, and we don't want them to move or something like that. And so they have this mentality of what is the next shiny new thing, and if you build it, they will come. And so this is the mentality, and it just keeps going.
We hold out. I know that this project is important for the city of Perry. For different reasons. It was a big economic driver for their community. We hold out jobs as this thing that we're trying to add on. Never mind, I've heard we have a workforce shortage in Iowa, but we need to add more jobs. I'd be more worried, I think, about the types of jobs we're adding. And I think at merchants bonding or IT, those are going to be mostly professional level positions. I'm assuming. Pork producing jobs, I don't know. Do those drive the economy the same way as everything else?
Not necessarily, but I mean, in that community, it would.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah,
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, but
I don't know. I don't know. I'm asking the question, and I suppose that there are people that follow these things better than I do that think this is an efficient use, fair use of tax dollars. But I'm not as convinced based on my read of it.
No,
I'd rather lower taxes for everyone than give out to specific businesses.
That's right. Look, one example, I think, in comparison is just look at what happened with small businesses when they originally passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It benefited small businesses across the board, and they were hiring people, giving bonuses, and that was where you saw growth happening, which benefited communities and benefited the state as a whole. That is much more better than doing these direct specialized incentives, picking winners and losers.
I think that's the phrase that we should come back to as we think, are we picking winners and losers? And certainly we have winners on these awards. I don't know that there's necessarily we can draw a straight line to a loser, but it costs money. These things, it's not government's money, it's taxpayer money. This doesn't exist. I think too often we get caught in this trap of thinking that there's just this pot of money that magically exists that we can do these things with. But no, it costs the rest of us money, or the rest of Iowa businesses or whatever. We want it lower and flatter and fairer for everyone. And that's on the corporate side, that's on the sales tax side, that's on the income tax side.
Yeah. And I think for taxpayers it's frustrating because they're told repeatedly by local governments, well, we can't cut anything, we can't do anything about property taxes, and yet this is an example of handouts, and is it was that art essential?
Yeah.
Was that an essential appropriation to put that up? And that could be a debate to have, but it probably wasn't essential.
No, probably not. And maybe it's not large dollars in the grand scheme of things, but it's dollars, and they add up.
Yes,
and I think it's tone deaf when folks are so frustrated about their tax bill when they see these things happening, or you're an elected official in another part of the state that is making those tough decisions. You come to central Iowa and you see those kinds of expenditures being made, and you're like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Why we're trying to do the hard work out here.
Well, look at even at the federal level, the boondoggles of the Green New Deal and all these what was the Biden Inflation Reduction Act and all this stuff, and
which did the opposite.
Yeah, politicians like the ribbon cutting and say that they're having all these incentives create jobs and having this multiplier effect, but it really doesn't work.
I'm going to come full circle on today's episode, John. We need to get back to the period of time and a sense when government doing less and government getting out of the way and maybe sometimes being silent is the right way to move forward. How do you like the way I wrapped that up?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
that was great. That was great.
There you go, folks. All right. That's all the time we got for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to share the episode with your friends. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.